When we were walking around the mangroves, you saw some things eat the mangrove leaves right away. There's a lot of insects in here and other critters that'll feed on the leaves. Some of the crabs even feed on the leaves. The mangrove leaf, when it falls in the water, starts to gain in food value. Protozoa, little one-celled animals and yeast and bacteria and fungi all start growing in and on the leaf. And what the mullet were doing is when that pellet went through them, they digested all that stuff, and out came the mangrove pellet again, the mangrove leaf, but now smaller with more surface area. And then a barnacle would suck that in and eat it and take off the stuff off of it and let the mangrove pellet back out again. And then a shrimp. You ever watch a shrimp in a bait bucket where their feet are going all the time and pushing stuff in their mouth? It'd do the same thing. So that energy transfers itself through that food chain from one animal to the next, and then we eat that shrimp. Or we eat that fish, and we get the energy, and then we pass it on. So that's basically how it moves through that food chain. We're all eating sunlight that green plants converts into chemical energy that then moves through the food chain that we get to eat. So another question.
How does the pod that falls from the tree get planted? Because you said it just falls and now it's floating. How does it get stuck into the ground?
Okay, Will, that was a great question. Can I borrow your propagule? We're going to call this a propagule because it's actually a little baby tree. It's no longer a seed. It's a tree ready to go. Okay? Now, what we had talked about is how it detaches from the seed. Can I pull your seed capsule off? Okay, the seed capsule, bloop, and we can see, I don't know if you can get close enough, we can see the little leaves already formed at the top of this propagule. Okay? So what happens is now this is going to drop into the water. And then once it's in the water, it's going to bob along, okay? It's going upstream or it's going downstream, bobbing. That's why some people may also call this a mangrove bobber. It's just a little baby mangrove tree that hasn't found its home yet, okay? So it's going to bob along until something happens. Maybe it gets stuck in some mud, okay? And now she's kind of stuck there, and in no time at all, it starts growing roots, using up some nutrients from the sediments, and these leaves open up, and now we've got the solar collectors, and we begin a tree. And then it's going to, in no time at all, it'll become a big tree.
Why don't the mangroves grow up north?
Albany, that's another good one. You mentioned it's a tropical tree. So what do you think the thing that keeps it from growing north would be if it's a tropical tree?
The frost.
The frost. So in Florida, we're one of the only places in North America that has mangroves. Mexico has them too. But in Florida's coast, they go up the west coast of Florida, just above Tampa, almost to Newport Richey in that area. And they get smaller and smaller because they get hit by frost year after year. And pretty soon they can't make a living anymore. So grasses, we call them salt marsh grasses, take their place. We're in the cold weather areas. And on the east coast of Florida, they go up to about Jacksonville. Why would they go further north on the east coast of Florida than on the west coast?
Because of the Gulf Stream?
Yes, good, Matt. Well, the Gulf Stream, warms up the climate along the coast area, and that'll do it for us, right? And that's how come they're Florida trees. They're the whole Caribbean. Those seeds they may be, some of them landing in Costa Rica or in the Caribbean islands. So good question.
Why is the water around the mangroves so dark?
When you look at the water, you might think, well, it's all dirty, but it's really not dirty. Okay, first, we're in this mangrove forest, and much of the sun's energy has been cut off by the trees. But if you notice, the water itself has a very brownish color. What drink does that maybe remind you of? Anybody?
Iced tea.
Iced tea, that's right. And that's basically what we have here. We've created sort of a mangrove tea. And how that happens is all those leaves that Dr. Hammond was talking about falling into the water and starting to rot, they give off a tannic acid, and that's basically the same type of stuff that's in tea. And with the large quantities of leaves that are going into this food chain, we create a mangrove tea.
Okay, this question's from Independent School in Tampa, and it's how do mangroves help protect the shoreline?
Well, one of the reasons that Florida government, both the state and a lot of the counties have passed mangrove protection laws is they do so much work for us. When hurricanes come in, the mangroves, if you look back through the mangroves, you try running through them, you just can't get through them. They slow that surge wave from a hurricane down. And people in Southwest Florida and South Florida be paying thousands and thousands of dollars of additional insurance premiums if it wasn't for mangroves that help stop the waves from coming in a hurricane. And they also, in addition to providing that food for us, help clean up the water. So they protect the shoreline and the shoreline animals and plants by cleaning up the water. We know now that mangroves and seagrasses do as much work as all the sewer plants cost in Southwest Florida. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in building sewer plants and operating them every year. If we didn't have mangroves and seagrasses, we'd have to do their work, and they're doing it for us. So they also, help build land by catching silt, the sand and the muck that comes down the estuaries. Those red mangrove roots trap it, so they help to build land. That's why sometimes they're called the walking tree, because they walk out over the oyster bars, with their prop roots, and they kind of build land. So they protect us from storms, they protect us from pollutants, and they help protect us and enable all the other critters to live a life.
How big do mangrove trees get and how fast do they grow? Are these trees endangered?
Well, they're not really endangered. They get stressed, and the biggest thing that's done most of them in is development, where they've been removed. And that's why Florida protected those trees. They do get hit by pollution, and they do get stressed by boat wakes, where the boat wake hits the prop roots and makes them weaker, and then little gribbles and things get in and can nibble on them. So those are some of the reasons. But they're not really an endangered plant in Florida. But they're so special, we protect them by law. So mangrove trees are trees that have learned to live in salt water, in the brackish water of the estuaries. And that's what makes them so special.